Lance has a championship club series that covers almost everything that has to do with Toastmasters, building a championship club, leadership for a championship club, how to promote and market a Toastmasters club. And the list goes on and on. So I want you to check the chat box for Lance's website, lancemillerspeaks.com, because I'm sure you're going to want to check out his website after we hear him talk today. I am happy to introduce our keynote speaker for the District 103 2021 Winter TLI, Mr. Lance Miller.
Well, thank you, Jay. And yes, I can hear all that applause coming in from Chicago. It's great to be back with you. I've had so many great trips to District 30, now District 30 and 103, as you guys continue to grow out there. And I want to take this next hour and just share some of the really hard-won lessons that we learned in running our club and that I've learned in working in Toastmasters over the years. And one of the things that I want to share with you, and I think those of you that heard me speak before know this story, but when I joined Toastmasters in 1992, I joined a good club. We had about 35 active members in it. And I really didn't know what Toastmasters was. It seemed like a fun thing to do. And I had an audience that would listen to me. I mean, what else can you want? Nobody else would listen to me. And about 6 months later, we had about 12 people coming to the meeting. We still had 35 on the roster, but we had 12 coming to the meeting. It was going down each week. Now, I don't know if that sounds familiar to anybody, but one meeting, 5 of us showed up, and we're sitting there. We didn't have a meeting. We had something we call out here in California coffee, and we're sitting around deciding whether we're going to keep the club or we're going to close the club. What are we going to do? And I don't know, has anybody here experienced anything like that? You're sitting there not sure what's going to happen with your club. And the reason I want to tell you this story is that there's a lot of people that hear what we did and we think we were something special. Now, I do think my club's something special, and I do have a great group of people in the club. But that meeting and that coffee, we decided that if we're going to do Toastmasters, we're going to win with Toastmasters. And as somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but they said, if we're going to do this, let's win with it, or let's go do something else and win with it. But I don't want to sit here. And at that point, they said, just, run a losing club. And I sort of coined that and said, I don't want to run a hospice Toastmasters club. I say hospice Toastmasters. That's where we keep the club members comfortable until the club dies. And there's a lot of clubs out there that are sort of hospice Toastmasters clubs, and you just wonder if they're going to make it. Membership drive to membership drive, dues collection period every September and March. And somebody else said that Toastmasters ranked all the clubs internationally, and they had this program that tracked you. And we didn't even know what the Distinguished Club program was, because we just joined the club and we were coming to the club meetings. We'd never read the manuals. We just were having a good time, and our club was failing. Back in the 90s, Toastmasters had a Distinguished Club program that ranked all of the clubs internationally, and you got points for everything you accomplished in your club. I'm going to segue for just a second, because I want to let you know I'm not politically correct, and I don't pull my punches. And I think if we're going to get to the bottom of things, we got to be able to talk about the problems. And if you can't solve the problems. So it's just that simple. So I love that other Distinguished Club program. The current Distinguished Club program basically provides the minimum level that every club should do. If you get all 10 points, you'll keep your club at about a 20-member level and just barely keep it alive, and you get a gold medal for doing that. I don't really agree with that, because what built my club, what we applied and we continue to apply today, was that other program. Now, that being said, it took 5 years, but we decided to be a top 10 club. And in 1999, we were the number 4 club in the world in Toastmasters. We had 95 members. We had 57 people get through their educational programs that year. And it was an incredible experience to watch a group come together like that and have a common goal to want to achieve. Now, those of you that have your cameras on, how many people here have ever been vice president of education in your club? Okay, most of the hands go up. Now, my live seminars, I get this feedback. I'm going to say, what happens in May when you're vice president of education? What happens in May is you're begging members to complete a speaking level so you can get your DC points. Am I correct? Whoever's in charge of the Zoom thing, mute that guy. So you're begging people. You're begging them. And they always have like a nasal tone and they go, I don't really want to do it. I want to do it when I want to do it. I don't want to be pushed to do it. And I have a tendency to send those people to the principal's office, or as I say here in America, I just want to shoot them. Okay. I said that to a group in New Zealand and they were shocked. I said, it's an American thing. Okay. Don't worry about it. Anyway, here's what happened in my club. May came around and the members were calling the vice president of education mad, saying, you haven't given me enough speaking slots to finish my CC. I'm not going to be responsible for this club not being a top 10 club. You find me speaking slots. The members wanted to win. The members wanted the club to be a top 10 club. And the members were demanding that they get through their speaking levels before June 30th. And it took me years to realize what I'd experienced, because most people in Toastmasters have never experienced a club themselves trying to win. Most members in Toastmasters that I have seen have experienced, you get to be president or an officer, and now you're trying to motivate your members to do these things, and you're trying to move this club some way, and you can't seem to move them. You can't seem to get membership. And so I'm very okay. I'm very familiar with both sides of that coin, because that's what we had to flip that in our club to get it to work. Okay, so I want to share with you, I have a few slides. I want to go over some points. The main thing I really want to discuss with you today is your attitude, your viewpoint on what Toastmasters is and what we're doing in it. And from that standpoint, a lot of people, I'm going to share this with you real quick. This is one of the concepts I play with all the time, and this is what I saw happen. When we're young, we have a whole bunch of free will. Here's a kid dressed up like Superman. He's going to go out and take on the world. And I don't know, do you remember when you were a kid and Saturday lasted all day? I mean, it was Saturday. This is a great day. And you were excited to go out there and see that day. And now as adults, we wake up Saturday morning, we blink, and it's Monday morning. What happened to the weekend? But what happens as we go through life, we get our creativity killed. Now, I don't know there's any way to stop this, but it starts with the big people around us. If you were like me, you had a couple of parents and they wanted me to behave. And so there were certain activities that and basically behavior patterns that I needed to follow. And I found out that life was a lot less painful if I followed them. And there came a point where I got ready to say or do something. I looked at my mom and dad and I went, what would they say or do if I did that? And based on their reaction, that determined my actions. And when I've reflected back on this, I realized at that moment, my parents started becoming the author of my life versus me being the author, writing my own life. And author is the root word for authority. And what happens is we have a lot of authority. So we have our parents, we go to school for 12 or 16, or maybe some of you 24 years. I don't know how long you went to school. And we learn it, we sit in the seat at the right time and we study what other people figured out. And we don't speak out. If we behave ourselves, we get to go to the next grade, we get rewarded on that. We get a job and we're told to sit at a desk or show up at a workplace, and we show up, we do what we're told, maybe we get promoted if the people like us. And over the course of that, what happens, we become hypnotized to a certain degree by authorities, and we give up the direction and drive in our life for what we want to do. We're waiting for someone to tell us it's okay. And this is what I've seen happen in Toastmasters, where people will show up in a Toastmasters club. I'm going to pop back out here now. They'll show up in a Toastmasters club and they will arrive on time sometimes, but they'll arrive on time and sit in the club and show up and think the club's going to move, just like it did when you were a kid, or like you did when you were in school, or like you do when you go to work, because somebody above you is making it move. Well, what we learned in our club is there is nobody above us. The success of our club was an accumulation of the leadership skill in that club. And there is no higher authority than you in your club. Your club's success is a direct reflection of the cumulative leadership that you have in your club. And clubs live and die by what we create with them. And that is really where our club started to turn around. It was when we decided to be a top 10 club, we took control and we started to own the club. And we started to figure out what we have to do to make this work. We weren't waiting for the district to come in and tell us. We weren't waiting for an area governor to come by. We wanted to build the club. We wanted to be a top 10 club in the world. Now, that's one concept I want to get across. Now, here's the other one I want you to think of. What is the real product of a person being in Toastmasters? It's not being a DTM. It's not being a competent communicator. I have a book here that we created. We wrote, this is we call it a hat pack. It's the hat you wear when you're a Toastmaster in my club. And you can see it's pretty good size. And in this, we have all of our goals and our objectives and what we do. And I wanted to read to you what we came up was the product of being a Renaissance speaker, which is the name of my club. First of all, it is a greatly improved ability to communicate sane messages effectively. You have an ability now to bring more sanity out to the world, okay? And you can do that effectively. It's a more competent person by reason of having acquired Toastmaster skills. But here is the final product that we want when people come to our club. Members successfully applying Toastmaster skills to enhance their lives and to contribute to the creation of an improved civilization here on Earth. Now, does anybody think we need an improved civilization? I think it's pretty crazy out there. The essence here is not about being a great Toastmaster. It's about being great in life, being a Toastmaster. Because of Toastmasters, you're great in life. You're acquiring the skills you need in life by being in Toastmasters. Now, with that, there are 4 primary areas of soft skill development that we have in Toastmasters. I don't have a slide on this. I'm just going to talk to you about it, so jot it down if you want to. The first one we know really well is communication. And there's 2 points in communication that we develop skills in. One is prepared speaking. The other area that has been equally as important to me in the success I've had in my life, and I'm a world champion speaker, so I know a lot about prepared speaking. Equal to that is table topics. And table topics is not some little simple game we play. Table topics teaches you how to handle the unexpected question. And I can't tell you how many times in the working world I've had things tossed at me. And because I was familiar with table topics, I could handle that environment, maintain my composure, maintain my position, maintain the organizational structure I was in, and it didn't throw me. And there's a specific way I feel we need to do or table topics. And I see clubs do it all different ways. I'll share with you how we do it in our club, and you can see if you do it this way or if you want to try to adopt it. I see a lot of clubs will say, who wants the table topics question? And somebody goes, oh, I'll take one. And somebody raises their hand. That's not the purpose of table topics. The purpose of table topics is to teach you to answer a question when you're not expecting to get it. What we do in my club, first of all, we have a calling order. So the people that don't speak, the functionaries, the speech evaluators are all called first before the speakers, because we want everyone to speak in the club. But the table topics master asks everybody the question, waits about 2 seconds, and then calls on the person who's going to answer it. And you do not have the option of saying, I'm not interested, I don't want to participate in this, unless you're a guest. And then you can do that. This is part of this development. You answer the question. The other thing is, you don't say, I don't like that question. I like the one Joe got. I'm gonna answer that one. Because if you're sitting in a sales meeting with your boss and they look at me and they go, Lance, why are the sales down in your division? And I go, I don't like that question. I like the one you asked Bill on why he's doing so well. I'm going to answer that one. That doesn't work in life. Okay. So the point is, we want our members to develop the ability to answer an unexpected question. And there's a mental lockup that happens. So you ask that to the whole club, and the whole club locks up mentally, wait a second or two, and then you ask the person who's going to answer it, and then everybody can relax, but they had the opportunity to have that mental lock where they don't know what they're going to say, and they have to think through it. And that exercise, week after week after week, starts to develop the skills to think on your feet. The second area of development is effective, we call in my club coaching. And it's effective feedback. It's giving people the ability, encouraging people and making more competent individuals. If you look at people in your life, somebody somewhere probably worked with you and made you a more competent individual in some aspect of a job or a sport or a learning multiplication tables or whatever you were doing. And that person probably has a high level, you have a high level of esteem for that person. Well, I think one of the greatest things we can be is someone who builds competence in other people. And that's what learning how to be an effective speech coach and general evaluator do. Those two actions of giving feedback, looking at somebody's activity and figuring out how to give them the exact right feedback to make them into a more competent individual is a critical life skill. And that's primarily what I do in the businesses that I work in, as I take businesses and we get them to work properly, and I have to take the existing people and build them up and give them confidence. And I learned a lot of that. 80% of what I do by drilling my speech coaching in Toastmasters over and over again. The third area of development is effective meeting management. And those of us that have meetings out in the world, no, most people don't like to go to meetings. They don't start on time, they don't run on time, and everything in the middle is a waste of time. So in Toastmasters, we learn how to run meetings effectively, and that starts with Table Topics Master. You learn to run a little section of the meeting, it goes over to your general evaluator, you run a little section of the meeting, and it goes over to the Toastmaster who runs the entire meeting. And so you learn how to do introductions, you learn how to keep the meeting running on time. And when I have meetings outside of Toastmasters, people show up, I'm in the room early, the chairs are straight around the table, there's an agenda put out, usually there's a bottle of water, and I'm greeting them at the front door so they can come into my meeting. Where do you think I learned that? I learned that at Toastmasters, and I've had people tell me they will come to my meetings anytime. They said they start on time, they're energetic, we get a lot done, we end on time, they have prediction. They love coming to my meetings, but I learned how to run meetings in Toastmasters. Fourth area of development is your leadership development you learn by being an officer. And the 7 officer positions in a Toastmasters club represent the 7 key executive positions in any corporation or nonprofit organization. Vice President of Membership is your sales position. Vice President of PR is your promotion and marketing division. Vice President of Education is your Chief Operating Officer or your production person. The Sergeant at Arms is your facilities manager who has to manage the facility, and treasurer does treasury. All those positions are in any organization, and you learn how to basically do those in Toastmasters so you understand how the organization works, and you also gain those skills so you can play that yourself. Now, I'm president in my club for the 3rd time right now. And my club is not 95 members right now. We're about 35. And we from about 98 to about 2012, we were 60, 70, we were a high of 95 in that 60 to 90 range. And I'll tell you what happened, quite honestly. Clubs have a life of their own. I'm a world champion. I'm out traveling around the world. A lot of the key people in the club were out doing other things, and the other leadership took over, and they were used to this big successful club. And they didn't realize the drive and intention that those of us that build it had. And so they were sort of riding on the laurels of the club, and the club started to slide down. And now we're in a rebuilding phase. And I would like to see our club be between 40 and 50 members. That's where I'd like to see it be. And so we're in a rebuilding phase this year. But one of the things I push every meeting is how did you use your skills outside of Toastmasters? And one of the points that we ask for in our club, and we've done this for 25 years, is when we start the meeting off, we ask speakers that spoke outside the club. And any member that spoke outside the club raises their hand and they give us like a 30-second, and it's a Toastmaster. And, you know, Toastmasters think the only thing you do is speak for 5 to 7 minutes. So they're supposed to speak for 30 minutes. We're going, come on, just tell us who you spoke to, how many people were there. And, you know, just a little bit about 30 seconds on the thing. But we do get these people that run on for 3 minutes. We're going, come on, we got to get the meeting going. The point is, I digress. The point is, we reward speaking outside the club. And that's part of the product of being in our club is we want you active out in the world. And it's amazing to hear people that actually spoke before their city council or their school board, or they had to give a toast at a wedding or a eulogy at a funeral, and they're using their Toastmaster skills out in the world. And you see them change, and they'll say they could have never done it if they hadn't been in Toastmasters. So the first part of this talk is when you look at your membership, we have to realize we are enhancing people's lives way beyond the Toastmasters meeting. We're giving them the soft skills they need to live their life that they don't learn in school. You know, in school, nobody ever asks you to stand up and give an original thought. All we do is learn what other people figured out. That's what you do in school. You study what other people figured out, and you're expected to sit there and be quiet. And, you know, if you're like me, you have a hard time doing that. You know, I spent 7th grade in the hallway playing table topics with the principal. So learned to think on my feet on that one. And that is the truth. I had a math class. I kept getting put out in the hall because I wouldn't be quiet, and the principal would come by, and I don't know how I that was back in the good days of corporal punishment, where the Board of Education was down in the principal's office. And one of my greatest accomplishments in 12 years of school was never getting whacked, as we said. I never got paddled, but I came close. So, okay. So with that, that's the first thing I really want to talk about with you, is having the viewpoint of when your members come in, you're trying to enhance their lives with soft skills so they can be more successful in their life and go out and build a better world. That gives us a bigger game, a longer game to work with our membership, because I think everybody wants to be more successful. I certainly want to continue to build my success. I continue to want to have more abilities, to be able to get along better with more people, to have a larger sphere of management ability in areas that I work. And again, my Toastmasters training is something that has really enhanced that. Okay, the other thing is looking at your Toastmasters club. I look at it a little bit like going to the gym. I'm building my communication and my leadership skills, my muscles, my communication muscles and my leadership muscles. So when you go to the gym, you're not always concerned about, I hope you're not trying to be the best person at the gym. And you see people like that, right? They're walking around, you know, and they think they're the coolest person in the gym. Going to the gym is not about being the best person in the gym. Going to the gym is about being able to do the things in life you want to do. We come here so that we work out, and we have the muscular base to us, so we can, you know, we don't throw our back out. If we pick a suitcase up out of a trunk or something, we can actually live life, and we keep enough muscle tone on us. Well, the same thing's true with our communication skills and our leadership skills. What I know about communication skills, and I think leadership skills are the same way, if we don't use them, we lose them. And many of our speaking muscles and leadership muscles are very atrophied. And people are afraid to stand up and speak. They're afraid to take a leadership role because they lack the confidence that they could actually do it. You build that confidence in Toastmasters so you can handle those things in life. So the experience in the club needs to be a fun, friendly experience where it's okay to mess up and you're building skills. Because if we were already perfect, we wouldn't be in Toastmasters. We're here to work on those issues that aren't perfect. We're here to work out the problems that we have. Okay, with that, the other thing I'm going to tell you, and this is, I have lived this to the nth degree. I think this is true for everybody. You can ask yourself if it's true for you. The things I was struggling with in Toastmasters, I was struggling with in life. And they came to light in Toastmasters. The issues I was having problems with were sort of put under the microscope in Toastmasters, but I had the same thing in life. And one of the areas was, I mean, there were a number of things I had to deal with. There were specific self-confidence issues that I had that I overcame through Toastmasters. When I was president of my club, it's the first time I got to run an organization with nobody over the top of me telling me what to do. And I actually discovered my leadership skills and my executive skills that I had. And I discovered big holes in my leadership skills and executive skills that I needed to develop. One of the things that I had a really hard time with, and this is one of the things we get to learn in Toastmasters all the time, is how to accept a bad evaluation. You know, that's a really important skill to have in life. How much bad advice or bad job evaluations or friends or friends of my parents or whatever it was when I was younger that were to sit down and tell you what's wrong with you. And just think about that, how many times that happens. And one of the things we get to experience in Toastmasters is we get a lot of bad evaluations in Toastmasters, and you get to figure out how to handle a bad speech evaluation, take the good from it. And I see people in Toastmasters, it recently happened in my club, someone was so upset she wouldn't talk to anybody for like 3 weeks, couldn't believe that you'd say that about it, you know. And I go, come on. First of all, the speech evaluation wasn't that bad. The other thing was, that goes on with her in life all the time. And, you know, and instead of saying, here's an opportunity for me to develop those abilities. So anything that this is, as a leader in Toastmasters, if you have a member that's struggling with something, talk to them about the fact, ask them, don't tell them, but ask them, do you struggle with that outside of Toastmasters? Does that affect you? I remember we had one member years ago that if anybody said anything to her on how she could improve a speech, she would start to almost well up, and she'd have her Toastmaster books on her lap in the meeting, and as soon as the meeting over, she would bolt for the door. And I would usually tackle her about halfway to the door and sit her down, and she would be tears and all these things, and I would get her through it. And I'd say, now, come on, you know, we're here working with you to help you be a better speaker. And there were some points that you can work on and stuff. That was such a huge button for her. And after, I think probably took a year and a half. After that, all of a sudden, she was able to start to take that advice when people were telling her how she could improve. And, you know, we've all had people in our life and validate us and tell us what's wrong with us and tell us we're worthless. And, you know, thus the whole meaning of my world champion speech, because, you know, I experienced plenty of that, and, you know, learn the most important thing you can do is validate rightnesses in people. And again, I learned that in Toastmasters. Okay, let's get down to some nuts and bolts. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specifically I wanted to cover with you. Your attitude of you're helping people improve their lives. I say Toastmasters is a little bit like church. We revive the dead in Toastmasters, okay? What I mean by that, this person comes in and they're this little huddled shell of a person and they can't even answer a table topics question. 6 months later, you can't shut them up. They are more alive than you've ever seen. And we see this time and time again. Somebody comes in and they're a little unsure, and all of a sudden they start to gain that confidence to speak out, and they become more alive. And I think there's a huge correlation in life between being alive and being able to communicate with people, because people who are dead don't communicate. So let's just call it that way. Okay, let me look at what we've got here. Let's look at a couple of things with Toastmasters with your club. Okay, I'm going to play with a couple slides here. Share some stuff. Where are we? Here we go. Okay, the first thing is, when I came in Toastmasters, I joined the club thinking the people ahead of me knew what was going on. I was going to learn from them. Just ask yourself if you did that. You came in the club and there's these other people in the club and they go, they know the program. I'm the new person. I'm going to learn. They know what's going on. I'm going to learn how to do things. The problem is the people that came in ahead of me saw the people ahead of them and said, oh, they know what's going on. I'm going to learn from them. So with that, when there's a problem in the club, somebody that most people don't look at it and go, I need to solve that problem. They go, somebody should solve that problem, because there's somebody that's more responsible for me than me. I'm just a member in the club, but we don't have enough members. People aren't showing up on time. We're not getting people through their Toastmasters program. Somebody should solve that. And it's what I call an SEP. And if you ever read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? He talks about the SCP, and it's somebody else's problem is what it stands for. And there's this attitude that I've seen in a lot of Toastmasters where people are sort of sitting around going, well, we should solve that. Somebody should solve that. We need to fix it. But nobody says I should fix it. What turned my club around was when the 5 of us had coffee and we said, let's build a top 10 club. We started solving the problems in the club. And I'm going to tell you right now what I feel the number one reason clubs fail, the number one reason that clubs struggle with their membership and being a Toastmasters club is that nobody owns the club. If you think of a business, somebody owns the business. The buck stops someplace. They handle the problems. They don't let them persist for a long period of time, or else the business is going to go bankrupt. They're going to go out of business. There's a lot of Toastmasters clubs, especially today with COVID. You take the combination of COVID and pathways, which to me are about the same equal magnitude of devastation on Toastmasters. You put those two things on Toastmasters, and we are now down. We've lost a huge amount of membership. We used to have clubs under 20 members. Now we got so many clubs under 8 members, it's scary. These are stats you may not know about. But the problem is, somebody in my club, we have people that own the club, and we make sure that club stays there. Okay, so who in your club owns the club? Just consider the fact if you had your own like Subway sandwich franchise, and you own the franchise, you got to do the Subway sandwich program, make the sandwiches. You can't sell McDonald's hamburgers out of it, but you got to own that. You got to build the relationship with your customers when they come in. You got to keep the store clean. You got to do everything to build that business and keep it going. Same thing's true with your Toastmasters club. Okay, what's my next slide? I already went through this one with you. Okay, this is a big one. The meaning of life is you have, don't you hate Zoom? Now, when I do this on live screens, it's a lot more fun because I get to run around and look behind the screen and see what's going on. But how would you finish this? The meaning of life is that you have, here's what one of the biggest things I've gotten out of Toastmasters is you have to figure it out for yourself. And this comes back to that authority concept where people are always telling us what to do. I learned how to really start figuring out management and people and how to inspire people to achieve their goals by working in my Toastmasters environment. With 95 members, we had to add, this is figuring out for yourself. The vice president of education could not do all the scheduling and all the education tracking. It was ridiculous. We put in a vice president of production who did all of the scheduling, and the vice president of education simply tracked the education achievements of the people so that we put another officer position in. One of the other things we did, we had 95 people. We have a weekend meeting that's a 3-hour meeting. We have 6 speakers in it. I'm going to get to this in a second, but we couldn't get everybody through their speaking levels with 1 meeting a week. The second half of the year, we went to 2 meetings a week. And also after our weekend meeting, we go to lunch and have speakers at lunch, and we would create more opportunities. We had to figure out how to do that, but we weren't capping the production of the club to the time we met. We had to figure out how to expand our ability to, we had a big club. We had to expand, how do you expand the ability to deliver? Also, a lot of members come in the club with what I call a sort of a failure mentality. I know most of you got your cameras off, but just ask yourself, like this was true for me, still is. I've experienced a lot more failure in my life than success. And I think when most of us come in, we've had so many disappointments. We've had so many dreams. We thought things were going to go well for us, and then it was a letdown. And we can get sort of, I remember Lucy and Charlie Brown. She's talking to Charlie Brown, talking to Linus. Charlie Brown sitting on the park bench or the school bench, and she goes, Linus, now there's a failure face. Talking about Charlie Brown. And I love this cartoon. I saw this. I thought I'd share it with you. It's the son sitting there going, I feel like such a failure. And the father says, come on, son, you're only 17. I was over 40 before I was sure I was a failure. And so what happens is we have this whole failure mentality. And when things don't go right, all those past failures can start to kick in and go, this is just one more disappointment in life. This is something we had to handle in my club, and it was something I had to handle within me. And that decision to actually win at something. And I want you to keep in mind, I was part of this team that built our club to 95 members, the number 4 club in the world, 6 years before I won a world championship. And that experience of building the club, and I was competing the whole time. I competed for 13 years in the international speech competition. But that experience of building that club gave me a lot of confidence, a lot of insight into myself on that I could win. We could do something big. That I was capable of a lot more than I thought that I was. There's a whole other story behind that I don't want to get into. I'd love to get into it. I just don't have time to get into it. A couple points here. Behind any success is a tremendous amount of failure. And I'm going to just tell you my world champion story. I failed for 13 years before I finally won it. I lost more speech contests in the World Championship of Public, in the international speech competition, than I ever won. Okay. But I learned the most from the contest I lost. It was, I have a keynote I call Losing My Way to the World Championship. Now, I would never go back and change that path because what I discovered about myself. So if you try things in your club, they don't work. Don't go, oh, it's all lost. We're all going to die. Go, okay, that didn't work. Now let's figure out what will work. And you keep trying things until they work. And I do a whole 2-hour talk on that concept by itself. Another point, I look at Toastmasters International, but like I look at Home Depot. Okay, Home Depot has all the parts you can build your house. You go to Home Depot and buy anything you need to build your house, but they're not going to come build it for you. You got to swing the hammer. You got to dig the foundation. You got to put the framing in. Home Depot does not build your house for you. Toastmasters International has all the products for you to build your club with, but they're not going to build your club. It's up to you to build your club. Okay, and that's what it takes. You can do it. And now let's look at what the Toastmasters game is. Now, a game has a couple things to it. Game has a beginning and an end to it. So let's look at this. Now, I know you can't talk to me. I love, and so I like my live seminars. I'll tell you what most people tell me. I said, what's the beginning and the end of the Toastmasters game? People say, icebreaker, DTM, something like that. Well, a game is something the whole club plays. And there's a specific, like I said, most games have a time frame except baseball. Baseball's got innings, okay? But I didn't realize this when I came in, but for the last 28 years, we run our club on this game. The beginning of the game is July 1st and the end of the game is June 30th. We run it on the Toastmasters year. That's how everything is ranked in Toastmasters. So when we start the year out, we're like, what are we going to accomplish this year? The game consists primarily of 2 things. It consists of getting members in the club. So you build your members in the club. And it consists of getting your members through their educational programs. And this is the old legacy program. I haven't changed the slides, but you take each member and see what you can do to get them through to a CC, or now it's a level 1, level 2, level 3. I'm working on my 4th level 5 right now. So I guess that makes me a 20. Anyway, I'll beat up on pathways in a little bit, but not too much here. Team structure. Let's look at your team structure. I'll pop out of here just for a second so you can see me. One of the things I saw in Toastmasters, a flaw in the program, was that when we train officers, you go to your officer training and the sergeant at arms goes to one room, the president goes to another room, the VPE goes to another room, the treasurer goes to another room, the VPPR goes to another room, and you never teach the team how to work together as a team. Now, this is one of the things I figured out when I was president the first time in 1997 in my club. I put the organizational structure together, and I have a lot of training in organizational design. So I looked at this and I said, how does this work? Anything we do sort of works on an assembly line. We move, any organization has products or services move through it. I don't care if you're building cars or if you're H&R Block doing tax returns. You take, financial records and put them through a system and you get a tax return. Okay, so what do? We have a raw, incompetent individual coming to Toastmasters. What's the process they go through? The Toastmasters process. So the first thing is, flip you back over here. Put my slide back up. The first thing is you need a place to meet. So as the Sergeant at Arms puts that there. Now, one of the things that we put in my club, and this is, again, one of my management principles, is you can't manage something you can't measure. I mean, how do you manage your car if you can't measure how fast you're going? How much gas is in the tank, right? So we needed an objective way to measure each one of our officers so we could tell, they could tell, and we could tell if we were doing the job properly. Otherwise, it's management by opinion. And, you know, opinions are sort of like armpits. Everybody's got a couple, but nobody wants to experience the other person's. So the Sergeant at Arms, I came up with this metric, which is a functioning meeting space and an on-time start to the meeting. The Sergeant at Arms is responsible for getting everybody in their seat and starting the meeting on time. And that means that meeting room has to be set up, the air conditioning on, the right number of chairs, the lectern with the gavel, the banners, the ribbons for handing out at the end of the meeting. Everything has to be ready to go in the meeting, the functioning meeting space, and he has to start, or she has to start the meeting on time. Okay. The next thing is I like to ask who's responsible for getting guests to the meeting. And normally the response I get is Vice President of Membership. And it does say that in the VP membership training, but the primary person's responsible for guests is the person who has a relationship with the public, Vice President of Public Relations. And I'm just going to let you know this is a wrong title. And I presented this to Dan Rex and Sally Newell-Cohen at Toastmasters International, and Sally said it was a wrong title. It should be the Vice President of Promotion and Marketing. You promote and market your club. And that's a different function than public relations. But the point is, the Vice President of Public Relations, the way I judge them is how many guests come to the meeting. So they're constantly coming up with programs to get the members to bring guests or games or special events. And I have a whole program on how to get guests into your meeting. So the guest comes to the meeting, they experience Toastmasters, which is a critical component. Because in order for someone to join Toastmasters, they don't know what it is. At least I didn't know what it was. When I asked for this in live audiences, all the hands go up. I didn't know what Toastmasters was before I came to a meeting and saw what it was. And everybody says they would have joined earlier if they knew what it was, okay? Then they come to the meeting, they had an incredible time. They go to the Vice President of Membership to become a member. The way I manage the Vice President of Membership is the number of new members. So the Vice President of PR and the Vice President of Membership need to work really closely together because the Vice President of Membership gets all their potential new members from the guests that the Vice President of PR brings into the organization. Once they fill out the membership form, they go to the treasurer and they give them a check. And the way I manage the treasurer is accurate financials and dues collected. So we collect dues twice a year. As I said, I'm not politically correct. I do not know why we collect dues twice a year that don't match the beginning and the end of the Toastmasters year. This is the most cockeyed system I've ever seen. The Toastmasters year starts July 1st. We collect dues the end of September and in March. Who does this? We should collect dues July 1st for the year. Anyway, I digress. Okay, the treasurer, they pay the dues. Now they go to the Vice President of Education. The Vice President of Education sits down. We have them explain the program. When we had the other manual, we used to walk them through the manual, tell them what their speeches were like. And at that point, we would have them sign the cover of their manual with the date that they agreed to finish their CC. On that blank cover, we'd say, right now it's what, December. I would, if it was me, I would say you'll get your CC done by June 30th because I wanted it in this year. But let's be nice and say by December 31st, 2022, you'll get your CC done. I put that in the date, they sign it. They've now made a moral commitment to complete their competent communicator. Okay. Vice President of Education is the number of education completions. Now it's all tracked in pathways. So it's the number of level 1s, level 2s, level 3s that you get. Then the secretary keeps accurate club records. And here's what happens. A new member comes in over here. They experience Toastmasters. They join, they do the Toastmasters program, and their life changes. And they become enthused about Toastmasters because they're now more competent, they're more confident, they have a higher level of self-esteem, they know they can get the thoughts out of their head, and they bring their friends and family to the meeting because they want them to experience the same thing. And this is exactly what happened in my club. Once we got the members doing the program, which I'm going to pop out here for a second, it's the second reason Toastmasters clubs fail is they don't do the program. the Toastmasters program. They don't push each member through the whole program, so the member's getting the benefit of the program. Now, I'm going to digress with a quick story. I had a friend of mine that wanted to lose, I think, 50 pounds. It's about 5 or 6 years ago. And he went to Weight Watchers. I saw him like 4 months later, 6 months later, and he still had his 50 pounds on. He said, nah, that program didn't work. That didn't work. I saw him a couple months ago. He'd lost the 50 pounds. I said, what happened? What'd you do? He goes, I went to Weight Watchers. I said, I thought that didn't work. He goes, no, this time I did the program. What I mean is he went to the meetings before and did the weigh-ins, but he ate whatever he wanted. This time he went on the Toastmasters on the Weight Watchers program, and he lost his weight. Okay. So with the Toastmasters program, you get people to do the program, their life changes, but they got to do the program. So that's the second reason clubs fail, is they don't push people through to get their program. Okay. Now there's one officer position I haven't talked to you about. I'm going to go over with you right now, which is also the president. The president, basically two things I look at the president to do. The president's job is to have winning members in an expanding club. That's the product the president delivers. That means winning members, I call it the twinkle in the eye. People are enthusiastic about coming to the meeting. They're actively doing their program. They're winning and their life is changing. That means that the president has all these officers functioning properly. The expanding club is, as president, you should leave your club with more members and more education completions than your predecessor had. So that means every year your club's a little bigger than it was the year before. That means you're doing the right things. It puts the attention and focus on expanding the club. And that's what turned my club around. Because every year we wanted to be bigger and better than we were. So every president, we had a graph on the wall. At the end of the year, the president had to put their total points on that end of that graph, on our ranking, our international ranking. And nobody wanted that graph to go down on their year, and then we had to revert back up. Now, the president does two primary things. They give help to their members or to their officers. And there's two reasons you do that. One is you need to have your officers have a positive Toastmaster experience. A lot of people come in and they take a position and then they don't do it. And they start to feel bad about it. And they start to then, their morale goes down. And you got, as a president, I get in touch with them and I talk to them. We'll go out and have coffee. We'll say, no, let's get you winning on this. I just imagine VP PR comes in and they don't do any PR for the first 2 months. And they're sort of feeling like, oh gosh, I wish I had taken this. I sit down, let's get a newsletter out. Let's get some activity going in here. Let's contact some local people. Let's get some flyers printed up. Let's get a membership game going. And you get them winning. And once they're winning, their energy comes in and they're really starting to win. So they need to win on their job. The second reason as president, I make sure that my officers I'm helping them, is if they don't do their job, I get it. And if you want to have a horrible time as president, have 6 officers that don't do their job. And you're sitting there scheduling every meeting, you're filling out every membership form, you're collecting the dues, you're scheduling all the speakers, you're going to have a horrible time. Now, here's the thing that happens with presidents, it happens with everybody. You wind up getting hung up and stuck, and you need some help, and you got to be willing to get help. That was one of the biggest things I learned being my president the first year, was saying, I need some help with this on how to get around it. First thing I would do is I'd use my EC up here, my members. And so I would get help from inside the club. And if we couldn't solve the problem inside the club, we went outside the club. And we asked some of the top clubs in our area, which very soon we were the top club in in all of Southern California at one point. Okay. So, but that's the system that I put together to see that everybody gets through all the functions are being covered. The officers are being helped. And the worst thing you can do, I felt, as a president or running a club, is to have a problem and not solve it. And it just sits there. And the problem could be a really bad Toastmasters member. We've had to kick people out of our club. We had to vote them out. We had one guy that came, and the whole purpose for joining our club was it was his own personal eHarmony group. And so he started dating all the women in the group. And you want to have a problem in a Toastmasters club? Have 3 ex-girlfriends in the club while he dates another member. You want to see some Peyton Place emotion flying around? And so we actually had to say, that's not the purpose of the club. You got to decide whether you want to be here for the right purpose. So we voted them out. Now, remember I said the number 2 reason that people did not do, or the clubs failed, was that they didn't do the program. I want to go over the speaking frequency math that we did in our club. This isn't taught in Toastmasters, it should be, but this is based on the old legacy program. That was a lot easier program to manage. And I'm going to tell you what I did in my club this year to sort of stabilize it with pathways. Whoops. So we ask every member to complete a speaking level every year. And quite honestly, this is where my club turned around. Pop out. We had people speaking every 4 or 5 months sometimes. Remember, I was saying Toastmasters is like going to the gym. Well, if you hadn't exercised for 20 years and you went to the gym, how are you going to feel the next day? You're going to be sore. Now, that's like being nervous and speaking because your speaking muscle is really weak. There were so many people that gave an icebreaker and they said, I was so nervous, I'm not going to speak for 6 months. Now, imagine if you went to the gym and you said, I'm so sore, I'm not going to go back to the gym for 6 months. How would you feel 6 months from now when you went back to the gym? You'd be sore again because you lost all the gain you got going to the gym one time and doing some exercise. So when we got people speaking frequently in the club, they started keeping the gain they got from each speech. And they started to get better with each speech because they were doing it frequently. And this is where, and I'm going to tell you, we did this originally for the points. I didn't look at the personal development. I said, we get points when you finish your CC, get through your CC. I want the points. What we wound up with was people's lives changing, and they got the twinkle in the eye and they got the spring in the step, and they became more competent. They became more confident because we got them to speak frequently. This is what turned the club around. This is really where the rubber hit the road. And so frequent speaking is something that I think you really need to have in your club to have it be a successful club. Now let's put some math behind it. And then I'm going to tell you the third reason clubs fail. Okay, the big thing we're talking about is winning members, which I talked about. Speaking frequency. Let's look at your club training capacity. Now let's just say that you have 4 speakers at each meeting. You meet once a week. So you have 50 meetings a year. Usually 2 weeks out of the year, you're not going to meeting, or you have elections or contests or something. So that gives you 200 speaking slots in your year. Now in the old legacy program, there were 10 speaking spots per every speaking level, which meant at 100% capacity, you could get 20 completions in your club. Okay. And that's what I said in my club. What we wound up doing, we had to increase. We have 6 speaking slots. So we have 300. We have 6 speakers a meeting. We have 300 speaking slots, but we did 57 education completions the year we won, which is 570 speaking slots we needed. We created almost double the speaking slots with extra meetings and speaking outside the club, lunch meetings, all that sort of stuff to get people through their manuals. I don't want to do that one. Talked about that. Okay, I want to pop out. Good. I had tons of slides on this stuff. We're going to wrap up here in just a second. Third reason clubs fail. First reason is nobody owns the club. So people come and they think somebody else is supposed to solve the problem. Nobody's sitting there saying, I'm going to see this club succeeds. I need a team around me that's going to see it succeeds. Let's get this thing together. Let's make this club a winning club. I'm going to tell you, I've done 5. I'm working on my 6th new startup right now. I've been hired as an executive in 5 startups. I have a management group I put together. We have our own company we're launching right now, which is a line of sustainable products for commercial and agriculture applications. So we can lower the carbon footprint in the building by about 20%. We can save 25% in irrigation water. 4 of us are in this thing. Nobody's sitting around waiting for somebody else to make a decision. Nobody's sitting around thinking somebody else is going to make our success. Okay. And that we own what's going on with this business. And we know that it's getting out of bed every day and putting every bit of energy into it we can is what's going to get the business off the ground. And the same thing's true with your Toastmasters Club. So the first reason that Toastmasters Club fail is that nobody owns the club. Get the ownership in your club. Sky's as high as you want to build it. Just build the thing out. Make it a dynamic communication leadership program. Number 2 reason the clubs fail is that nobody does the program. We don't get each member getting through the Toastmasters program. Third reason clubs fail is you don't promote. I didn't say you didn't promote effectively. You don't promote. Any business to get new business in has to promote. And so, I mean, every single week now or every single month, you got promotional activities on my website. And I have a whole program on how to promote and market a Toastmasters club. I also have free tips cards. This is a leadership tips card. These are backwards. That's speaking tips, building a championship club tips card, and that's a speech evaluation tips card. I got a lot of information on my website. I don't have time to get into how to promote a club with you right now, but the point is, the reason they fail is you're not promoting. And there's a lot of other dynamics in that. I've got a couple minutes left here. I want to share with you what I did in my club. I've spoken throughout my life to over 80 districts. I've worked with over 80 districts, helped build their clubs and Toastmasters programs. And I know I've been to district, I said 30 and 103 and probably a dozen times. I have people I know all over the world that talk to me on a regular basis. And we have something that's sort of thrown a wrench into Toastmasters a bit. And it changed the fundamental training program we have called Pathways. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm not a big fan of Pathways. Nobody in Toastmasters membership asked for Pathways. To me, I compare it with COVID. Nobody asked for COVID, but you know what? We got to deal with it. And how many times at work, I look at this as just another Toastmasters experience. How many times at work do we get some program that comes down that some well-meaning nitwitted executive decided we needed to do, and it comes down and you got to figure out how to make the thing work. So we got to figure out how to make Pathways work, because that's what we have right here, right now. It's going to be here for a while. And I don't think it's going to be here forever, but I think it's going to be here for a while. We need to figure out how to make it work. Here's what I did in my club this year. I have this program where I want every single member of my club to get through a certain amount of speaking levels every year. And I want them to get the maximum benefit out of those 4 areas: communication, speech evaluation, coaching, basically meeting management and leadership. I want them to get the full benefit of being in my Toastmasters club in their life, the full benefit they can get from being in our club. So I ask each member to complete 10 speeches, to coach another speaker 10 times, to be a functionary 5 times, timer, grammarian, all counter, you know what I'm talking about, to be a timer, to be a functionary 5 times, and to be a Toastmaster, a general evaluator, and a table topics master once during the year. So that's 28 speaking or 28 activities that I want each member to do so they get the benefit of the Toastmasters program themselves. That also gets a commitment out of all the members to do a minimum amount of production themselves to keep the meetings running and to keep the speaking and keep the coaching going and all the things we need to go. And it's really been working beautifully. And I said, I don't care where you wind up in your Pathways program. I want you to do 10 speeches. I had 5 members that didn't want to do Pathways, were going to quit the club, or they were going to stay in the club, but they weren't going to participate. And I told them that I'm more interested. Okay. So I'm more interested in them in being in the club than not being in the club. They were valuable 25, 30-year Toastmasters that had tremendous insight. And I said, and they said that one guy said that he didn't want to do Pathways. I said, great, do your speeches out of the Competent Communicator Manual. VPE will count them as Pathway speeches. We have to record them. And I need your input. I had another guy, he's been there. He goes, I'm tired of doing 5 to 7 minute speeches. I said, great. He goes, I'm going to do 15-minute speeches. You tell Vice President of Education, you're going to do 15-minute speeches. I'll back you up on that. I want you winning with Toastmasters, but I want you winning with Toastmasters on a Toastmasters program, and we'll use the other manual if we need to. Now, that's probably not going to be received really well by certain high-ups in Toastmasters, but I don't really care. What I care about is the people in my club get the benefit of being in Toastmasters, and I don't meet some arbitrary law that somebody set in, some distant headquarters. That's not what this is about. This is about each and every one of us figuring out how to service our members with the tools we have and changing their lives so they lead more productive lives outside of Toastmasters. And with that, I think we're wrapping up. We're on right about an hour right now. And so, Jay, I'll turn this back over to you.
That was fabulous, and we really thank you. Let's
Well,
give
you're
a warm, yes, let's give a warm applause to our keynote speaker. I'm going to unmute you so he can hear it.
Thank you.
Yes.
This had a couple.
Yes.
Good job.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Awesome.
Thank you. On my website, you can sign up for a newsletter. I just want to let you know, I really enjoy the relationships I have with people, and I try to put valuable information out. So I do a speaking tip every week. I started about a couple months ago doing a living tip on life. And I have a lot of information that I had people asking me. I said, I'm going to do a living tip. So I do a living tip. And then I take these talks I do and I post those on Saturday if anybody wants to listen to them. So I do a Toastmasters training program. So from that standpoint, but you're welcome to sign up. I'd love to stay in touch with you. I've got a lot of material on the website that'll help you build your clubs. And like I said, I think that each one of us is just as valuable as we help others, and we help others succeed and do better in life. And that's what in Toastmasters we do. So we're a valuable organization. I'd love to see 1 million or 3 million people in Toastmasters, not 300,000. So thank you for having me this morning. And I will see you in a couple hours on the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Lance.